Welcome to Ricky Kesler from Income School speaking to a London meetup, put together voluntarily by Project 24 members.
I'll be starting a YouTube channel next year because I decided this year to just focus on the website. And I've been wondering about file storage because video files are obviously massive, and I only have I've got an external hard drive and a solid state drive in my laptop, but that's not going to last very long. So what do you guys do with all that video content?
So until recently, we would use an external drive, but usually something big like the generic term is a RAID, R-A-I-D. I used a Drobo is one that you can put like multiple drives in. So I have in my Drobo, I had 4 hard drives that were each 4 terabytes. Now that we're in an office, we have set up a server that works like a RAID, but it holds 12 hard drives, and they're all 12 terabytes. We're not using we're using a small percentage of that right now, but yeah, you do need to go to something external, and something like a RAID is nice because it's just good from a safety standpoint. Your content is stored in multiple places, twice. So even if one of those drives fails, you still have a backup. So it's really nice from a safety standpoint, and you can just store a lot of data. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, cool, great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So it's about using pen names.
Yeah.
And I'm about to do an about page for my persona. And it's just, it seems sort of fake to make up a lot of experience for somebody, but in this niche he would need some experience, or her. So it's basically 4 or 5 ghostwriters writing under this pen name. How do you plan on putting together such an about page?
Structuring an about page, or specifically for?
Yeah, specifically for a pen name or a certain.
Yeah, as much as possible, I would think to try to base it the information in reality. I wouldn't claim to have a degree that I don't have or something. But then, as far as structuring the about page, depending a little bit on what the industry is, but any relevant experience that you or any of your writers have or can claim to have, just put it in there as if it was that person. And then what I would say is probably what's more important beyond that is, as you do outreach, if you were to, go be a guest on a podcast or something to try to build up that heat, I would do it under the name of that persona, so it's base the persona in reality, and then just, all the information you'd put on the about page, that a lot of that's kind of just up to you, whatever's going to be most relevant to your niche. So Jim built a pretty thorough about page on Income School for himself. I need to do the same now. And it covers a lot of stuff. So that might be a good example if you're looking for ideas of what should go there. Yeah. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm about to start doing a travel blog in Brighton, and basically I've done my research, and my main competitors are TripAdvisor and Visit Brighton, which is like the governmental tourist board. But the fact is, both of them aren't really giving content, they're just merely giving advice based on other reviews. And so when you look at there and you just do word counts, there only maybe Visit Brighton, nearly 350, but they've already made their money from people paying to be on their site. Will I be able to rank if I put 2,500 word articles with more content than they're giving, which they're not really giving that much content?
Yeah. No, that's fine. The difficulty is competing with their authority, and so their content doesn't have to be as good for Google to trust them, especially a government website. So anything that's official information about Brighton, they're probably going to rank number 1. A lot of things related to places to stay or tourism things like TripAdvisor is going to rank really well, but there's a lot of information that those sites, like you said, just don't cover. Their content is pretty thin. So length is one aspect, but also just making your resource really helpful if you do that, what will happen is that even if you're ranking number 2 or number 3 for some of these topics, as people go to the city website and they don't get the help they need, and then they go to TripAdvisor and it's kind of thin, and then there's this really good post, basically they're going to pogo stick back and forth, and so even if you rank 2 or 3, you're probably going to get a lot of traffic. And so that's maybe what I would think is like, create your content as if you want to outrank them, but then don't worry too much if you don't, because people will keep looking until they get what they need.
I finally started my YouTube channel a couple of weeks ago. Should I be using alphabet soup for YouTube episodes as well?
That's a great question, and we weren't sure of the answer, but we have been experimenting with our new channel. And in the early days of a YouTube channel, we're finding the videos that do really well are the highly searchable terms, kind of your alphabet soup response post style topics. They do really well because YouTube has no reason to promote your content until they see how people interact with it. And so if you create content that answers a specific question, people will find your content because it's just the most relevant. Google will, or YouTube will promote it, will put it up there. Once people start watching your content, interacting with it, then you switch to kind of this this area where you can just create content that's really interesting, that kind of parallels other content, and you can be a lot more fluid with what you choose to make videos about. But in the early days, I do think that that using the same search analysis approach, alphabet soup, is a good idea. And I wouldn't necessarily just do alphabet soup on YouTube. You can use it in Google because it's based on what people are searching broadly. And then just as long as the content is something that you think people would like in video format, again, so you go ahead and do it in YouTube and in Google. I think it's a good idea.
I have a technical question, and there's no right answer, but I just want to hear what you think about it. I have an about page and the schema text for this about page. I use the same as when you link it between your LinkedIn account, your Twitter account, and your YouTube page. So I have 4 websites, and I'm considering using the same as to link these websites together with the same about page. But then I think that it might eat into my to write on 4 so different topics with the same persona. And I'm just like, do I create a different persona as Morten do, or do I just own it? And because it's actually me and my websites, do I own it, or do I? What would you do?
Yeah, that's a tough one because our names appear on multiple sites. For the most part, they're related, sort of. Except, Income School is different from anything else we do. But if I would say that if 2 sites are really different, for example, like Embora Pets, it's just not at all related to all the outdoor stuff Jim and I do. It probably doesn't make sense for our names to be the same names associated with that, because it's like, this is the same Jim Harmer, this is the same Ricky Kesler. Like, what does he know about poodles? And the answer is very little. And so I guess that's my take is
but they're not related at all.
If they're not related at all, there's probably not a lot of value in trying to build off of that. The hard thing is then it's like, do I create all these social media profiles for all of the different personas?
I think that's lying. That's lying. That's why I didn't do it. So I'm doing the same as to the social profiles, but so Google will figure it out anyway.
They will figure it out. So if that's the case, then I don't have a problem with owning it. But I mean, if it seems reasonable that you could be an expert in all of the different topics, then yeah, sure. But it is a tough one because I don't like the lying either. It's like, how far down that road do we go?
The question I have is about the theme Acabado. And I've switched my site over from Divi Extra theme, which was just terrible for speed. I was having a lot of problems. But there's 2 particular points that don't seem to be working particularly well, and I'm not sure if it's a problem with the theme or not. So on the home page, if you've got an article which is written in Divi, on the home page it shows the title, it doesn't show the text below that, it just shows a couple of dots. If we could look to get that sorted out, that would be... Actually, in fact, if you in the standard installation of the theme, it actually shows a bunch of text, a bunch of code or something. And I think it was Josh who gave a helpful suggestion to change the thing. So anyway, now it just shows a couple of dots, but it doesn't actually show the content of the article. So that's one thing. And also, the gallery view doesn't seem to work on my website, at least anyway. So it shows the images, but when you click the images, it should pop up with the gallery, the larger image, and then you should be able to scroll through. It doesn't pop up with the larger image. So those are two things that are holding my website back. Yeah, I mean, the theme has been great. It's been running really smoothly, and it's very, very quick, which is exactly what I wanted. Transitioning over, I had to make a lot of changes to the overall structure and things like that. But once I got through all of that, I haven't looked back. So thanks very much.
Awesome. Yeah, you're welcome. I will bring those things to the developer and work on fixing them. I will say for anybody listening, the Divi thing, and maybe you can answer this real quick for me. I'm sorry. Are these posts that were written in the Divi builder?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's why. So we'll have to try to figure out how to.
Actually, you know how there's the additional plugin, the Divi plugin. I think it's called Divi plugin. It's something like that. But you can still write your articles in the Divi builder.
Right.
Even if you do that, it still comes up with the same issue where on the homepage it doesn't show the detail.
So for us, what we do is we don't use the Divi builder for blog posts at all. And so that's why we don't see the issue on our sites. So that's why. But yeah, I'll talk to the developer about that and see if we can just get that sorted out. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Yep.
So I've got a YouTube channel and a blog that are both 4 years old. I started the blog to support the YouTube channel originally. My YouTube channel has just passed its second goal of about $100 a month. I'm trying to bring my blog to the same standard, and I joined Project 24 in August, a couple of months ago. So my question is, at the moment, I'm making a blog post from every video that I do. Is that a bad habit I've formed? Should I focus on blog posts purely just for written word, or should I just keep going the way I'm going?
I don't think it's a bad idea to do that at all. I would say to not just do that. So if you really are trying to build up the blog itself, I would create some content that is just intended to be blog content following the search analysis method. And the reason for that is that with a channel of the age of yours, some of the kinds of videos you're making do well as video, but that same topic isn't really something that somebody's going to search in Google. And so it won't necessarily do as well as a blog post, at least at getting that Google organic traffic. So that approach works fine, and it's a good idea. It's something we need to do more often, actually. But I would mostly focus on doing that for those topics that are something that people would just type into Google. And then maybe also create some content that is really just based off of what somebody would search in Google that you might not be wanting to make a video about.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Okay, cool.
I'm just wondering, how practical is it to scale YouTube output? And is there a risk of it becoming a hamster wheel?
There is. It's something that we think about all the time. So scaling up, as in like bringing in other people, is something we haven't really done ourselves very much yet. I mean, obviously on Income School, you've seen Freddie on the channel a bit and stuff, but on that channel, it's been very difficult. People really got used to us, like we are the brand. On the new channel that we're building up, we're trying to make it so that the content is more of the brand. So we don't use our names as much. We're there, we're the presenters. Over time, we're going to try to bring in other experts and just have them on videos and act more as kind of the interviewer. And then at some point, we'll probably have a full-time employee who manages that channel and is in all the videos, and just try to sort of move in that direction. And then, that creates risk because if that employee ever decides to leave, it's like, now what? And so I think the employment contract with them might say, hey, you're welcome to leave at any time, but the agreement is before you leave, you have to make 10 videos with us to help transition it back away from you or something like that. So I think there are ways to do it. We haven't nailed it down yet. There is a risk of it being a hamster wheel. So I think you just have to be thoughtful about that as you build up the channel.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you about, well, it's in two parts. The first part is just really your insights about EAT and how that impacts on YouTube specifically. And the second part is depending on the answer to that, but is there anything I can do to utilize, like for example, being a top writer on Quora last year and my LinkedIn profile to help me with EAT in general on the brochure website, but also with the YouTube channel?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So I do believe that going forward, like EAT is going to, YouTube is a Google-owned property. I think it's going to come into play more and more. I think the difference today, though, is that YouTube is just, there's so much less content on YouTube than there is on the internet. And so YouTube gets to be a little bit less picky about what they show. And so it's like, if somebody does a search for something medical related, but there's only really two options, those two options will show. And so EAT tends to be playing less of a role. I do think it will matter going forward. And so, yes, I do think it's worthwhile to try to leverage those things. You can certainly talk about them in your videos, but I would also have it like on your channel description, maybe link out to that LinkedIn profile, post your YouTube videos on your LinkedIn profile, and just intertwine those two things a little bit more so that it sends people, but also Google looking back and forth. Same thing with the Quora. I don't know how that, like, if there's a thing tied to your Quora profile that shows that you were a top or whatever. But
there's kind of an indicator on this. So.
Awesome. Yeah, if you can find a way to kind of show that on your YouTube channel as well, especially in the channel description and tagging there and stuff, then I think that will play a role in the future. It just isn't as big of a deal yet. But YouTube's a great place to build up EAT, because with that sort of visual and audio engagement, there's a certain level of trust and rapport built that you don't get through just a blog. And so it's easier to tell who's faking and who knows their stuff in a video.
Yeah,
so right. Great question.
Hi, Ricky.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for taking my questions. I just got a couple. The first one is that my website is in the food niche, and when I first started the website back in February, I had a recipe section because I just felt like the website wouldn't be complete without one. But now it's just distracting because I feel like I should fill that area up, and I'll be doing that instead of writing content. So should I just get rid of the section altogether?
I would say that what I would probably do is that, depending on sort of what your focus is on food, if there are recipes that really are relevant to that are in any way sort of unique to your approach or whatever, then it's worth having them. It probably is worth having them, I would say, without actually seeing the site. If it feels like that is necessary to kind of make your website complete, but I would encourage you to have that be a supplemental aspect of the website. It's probably easier and more fun to go write recipes than it is to write blog posts. But I think just keep in mind that the recipes are probably not the thing that's going to rank well on Google and drive a lot of traffic for you. They're the thing that maybe is a nice resource that you give to the people that already came to the website, right? So you might link to your recipes from a blog post, but if you remember always that the blog posts are what are bringing in most of your traffic, maybe that will help you to not get distracted by the recipes that might be more fun to do.
Okay, thank you. One other really quick question is, with regards to EAT, I focused on writing all of my blog posts in American English to focus on increasing my US demographic. Does being British harm my growth in the US?
I don't think so. I really don't. As long as, like, if you're writing in American English in a way that, like, first of all, for the most part, we're not going to know. Nobody reading the website is going to be able to tell. Google's not going to hurt you for that. So really, it just comes down to, like, how do the users interact with that content? And no, I've seen people all over the world creating content in American English, and it doesn't seem to be a factor, as long as the content is user-friendly, comparably to what an American would write.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Quick question about YNYL. I've perhaps foolishly built a site in the space before realizing what a big deal it was, and I'm kind of deliberating whether to quit while I'm behind. But at what point with 7yearolds.com did you realize that it wasn't performing as well as your other sites? Like, were there indicators about traffic, or was it something else? It's like, when do you know it's a dumper, if you like?
Yeah. For us, it was really easy to compare because we made 7-year-olds right around the same time we made a couple other websites. And so just to watch them side by side, it was just, we could tell within a few months that this content was just not ranking as well and getting the same kind of traffic as our content about pet steaks. That said, there's a lot of things we didn't do on 7-year-olds that we should have done. And so, one of our goals in the next 6 to 9 months is to have one of our employees take everything we put in that course on EAT and just apply everything to 7yearolds.com and see what sort of a difference that makes. The reason I would hesitate to totally give up, especially if it's an area that you have some knowledge in and some interest in, is that what we're seeing, the trend from Google, is that YMYL is expanding.
Right.
More and more topics are getting included every year as YMYL, and EAT is becoming important across the board. So depending on what your specific niche is, if it's extremely competitive, maybe it is worth it to just quit, and pick something that you can just take off with. That will just be an easier fight. But if it's not like a totally competitive space, then the fact that it's YMYL today, everything might be YMYL in 2 years. So maybe just consider that before you make the call to dump it.
Some of us came outside to do the London meetup dance. It's going to be epic, epic, epic!